Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. I've been on a tear on Netflix lately with original movies. Bird Box, pretty solid. Came up a little short, but I think that's only because A Quiet Place exists. But I did enjoy it. It was pretty solid, especially by Netflix standards. Then throw in the Black Mirror Bandersnatch movie. Just a really cool, inventive thing that certainly nobody but Netflix has been able to deliver a movie like Bandersnatch. And now we dive into a movie, a little bit darker, a little bit more thriller-esque, with lead Jeffrey Wright, who I'm a big fan of from Westworld. As soon as I saw him, I was like, ooh, what do we got going on here, Netflix? And I'm watching the trailer, and I'm like, this has got like Wind River vibes. And I really dug Wind River. And I was like, you know what? Let's give her a go. And overall, I was pretty impressed with this particular Netflix original, although I thought the ending kind of left me wanting more, and not in a good way. So pull up a chair, man. Take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in, spoiler-free, on Hold the Dark. As I said, this stars Jeffrey Wright as Russell Core, who's an author who kind of studies wolves, and Riley Keough, who plays Medora Sloan. Her husband is away at war, and one day while she's out, she is in the house. She goes outside, and before you see her go outside, you see her kid playing in the snow. She goes outside. Her kid, Bailey, played by Beckham Crawford, is gone. So she assumes that it's wolves. I believe this takes place in Alaska, and there have been a couple wolves who have taken a pack of wolves that have taken kids before. So she writes a letter to Russell Core, asking him to come out and find the wolves that did this and put them down before her husband, played by Alexander Skarsgard, arrives home from war. So there's your setup, man. And Jeffrey Wright, very similar to Jeremy Renner, just has this like coolness to him where he's very quiet. He's always observing, and that really plays well into the character that's like an observational author. Always observing, always kind of taking everything in. And he's a guy who just genuinely wants to help. He decides to go all the way out there, one, because his daughter, who he's kind of estranged from, lives in Alaska, and two, because he feels for this mother. And the beginning of the movie, and actually a lot of the structure of the movie, very similar to Wind River in the fact that, Jeremy Renner's character, works at one of the national parks and is kind of a tracker and hunter. Jeffrey Wright, he kind of goes out there and is tracking. As he's moving through the wilderness, even the pacing had a lot of similar vibes, and it was really, really working. A lot of nat sound versus score, because a lot of something about the frozen tundra of anywhere just lends itself to nat sound. Feet in snow and things of that nature. I think all that plays really, really well. And then, very much like Wind River, this movie takes a twist from what you think is going on at the beginning and kind of dives into a bigger police investigation that, Jeffrey Wright gets to hang around for. And much like Wind River, I think the slower pacing, the methodical nature of the movie really work and lend itself to its actors. Jeffrey Wright, very, very methodical. And like I said, that plays very well, and he nails that stuff with his character. And then you start getting into the mystery part of it, and I'm just like falling deeper and deeper into this movie. I'm digging the heck out of it. Then you throw in, Alexander Skarsgard. We kind of jump to Iraq, see what happens to him, and he gets sent home. And I love Alexander Skarsgard, and it's one of those things where he's just so good at brooding, he doesn't have to say too many words. He has such an intimidating presence when he is just kind of standing and not talking. And this character totally lends himself to that and works very, very well. And what we end up finding out in the movie when we get around the middle part, right after he gets home, we've found out what the big secret is and what's actually happened. And it kind of leads Alexander Skarsgård on a revenge path of sorts. And the movie, I was rocking with it all the way up until shortly after that happened. His best friend kind of says, hey, I'll buy you some time. And all of a sudden, this massive shootout happens about a little past the halfway point of the movie. and lasts for like 10-15 minutes. It is so tonally off from the rest of the movie that it completely took me out of it. I had a really hard time getting back into it because the movie falls right back into the tone that the rest of the movie is, that slow, methodical kind of pacing and working through the story. And I had trouble getting back into that vibe because this shootout just completely disrupts that. And it feels like it's kind of meant to do that, to be on purpose, to kind of disjoint the movie. And if it was, kudos, you did, but not in a good way. I really disliked it. I think you could have probably had that shootout sequence last about 2 minutes maybe, and gotten in and out a lot faster, and I think the movie would have moved a little bit better. But it stumbles up, trips up the pacing pretty badly, and I had trouble getting back into it. Although the scene itself is executed pretty well, and does do some things decently, it just didn't mesh with the rest of the movie. And then when you get to the back half, it does. It kind of gets back into that, and you're building to something. When you get to the ultimate end of the movie, everything you think is going on, you're just like, how did we get here? And I was very confused by the end of the movie. And it has to do with decisions that certain characters make, and I won't spoil it. But if a certain character would have done what I thought they were going to do, I'd probably end up liking this movie a lot more. But it just seemed like, and some of the creepy decisions they make, there's wolf masks in the movie. That stuff plays pretty well, especially with Alexander Skarsgard's character. And there's some really beautiful shots. The cinematography in this movie, directed by Jeremy Saulnier, really, there's some really nice and terrifyingly creepy shots in this movie. Specifically in the last act, but it gets a lot weirder than the rest of the movie, and it doesn't quite address some of the things that the movie lays out. Riley Keough, as I mentioned, who plays Medora Sloan, I dug her character. She's very strange and off-putting, and I think that definitely plays into what her character is. I would have liked to have seen a lot more of her character. She kind of disappears for a stretch, and I would have liked to have dove into that a little bit more. But Jeffrey Wright and Alexander Skarsgard certainly carry this movie quite well. And like I said, through the first half and a little of this movie, really, really solid stuff. Third act has solid elements, but the ultimate ending and that shootout that happens toward the end of the second act kind of threw the movie off for me. And, overall, I think, Hold the Dark was pretty good. It could have been really good. It didn't quite click at the end and just missed the mark, where Wind River, which has a very similar vibe, kind of sticks tonally the same all the way through, even though there is also kind of like an action shootout type sequence. But that just played a little bit more. But the mystery, certainly it played like a page turner. I was very intrigued, very much wanted to get all the answers to the story that was developed. Just didn't quite get all of them. So you go, man. Those are all my thoughts on Hold the Dark. Solid performances from Jeffrey Wright, Alexander Skarsgård, some of the other supporting characters. Overall, pretty decent story, but just missed the mark for me. So I tell you what, as far as Netflix movies go, this is certainly one of the better ones, and they are improving, but still not quite getting across the finish line clean. So you go, man. All my thoughts on Hold the Dark. Now I want to know what you're thinking, man. Hit those comments down below. If you've seen this movie, did you dig it? Did you not? Did that shootout work for you, or did it kind of throw the whole movie in a tailspin? Let me know all those thoughts if you haven't seen Hold the Dark. Have we intrigued you to want to check it out? I would highly recommend watching both this and Wind River. If you're going to watch one, watch them both. I like very similar feels and vibes and tones, and both do things very effectively. Both movies certainly worth checking out, even though I like Wind River a little more and Hold the Dark just comes up a little short. So there you go, man. Leave all that down below, whatever you're thinking about those movies and thoughts. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe and little bell so you get alerts every time I make a new video. The Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. I'm the Seaman, and I'm signing off. Peace. Well, if you aren't still here, looking for something else to check out that's Seaman related, why don't you check out a video like this guy or this guy? And if you really want to help the Seaman out in year 2, hit that subscribe button and come join the Cinema Sit Down Squad, kids. You know what to do. See ya.